From a top-secret network of highly secure locations across South Texas, this is the return of the Spurs Insider podcast, NBA Draft Edition, where we will spend the next 30 minutes. I, your host, Mike Finger, the usual panel of Express News beat writers, Tom Orsborn and Jeff McDonald, and sports editor Nick Talbot. This panel will spend the next 30 minutes listing every possible player your local Cagers might take with number one pick in the NBA draft. And hopefully by the end of it, we'll decide who it's going to be. We'll break the news. Does anybody want to start and guess how this mystery will be solved? Who's going to be a Spur next Thursday in Brooklyn, New York, when the first pick of the draft is called?
I think it's going to be like an unknown Thompson twin. Like that we haven't heard of, like Steve Thompson.
I do like if you listen to the podcasts around the league, there's a lot of this speculation going on. We don't have any speculation. It's the arrival of Victor Wembanyama, which we've known about for a month. And I mean, what do we talk about on a draft podcast other than what everybody already knows? How can we create some drama, some hits, some listens, some downloads? Tom, do you have any suggestions?
Man, I'd like to hear, we know it's going to be Victor, but, one of the big question marks about him or something that people are skeptical about is, can he withstand the rigors of the NBA at his height and size? And I hear one of our...
somebody should write that story.
I hear the dean of Express News beat writers, Spurs beat writers, is working on a story about that, right, Jeff?
Well, there's our breaking news. Yeah, check out. Are we doing the promo already? Check out the Express News on Sunday thing.
Yes.
Never too early to promote the newspaper.
Yeah,
says the editor.
Yeah. Where are the other places they might read this fine piece on Sunday? ExpressNews.com, possibly a newsletter.
I get mentioned in the Spurs Nation newsletter on ExpressNews.com. You can sign up for all that stuff. But anyway, this is the draft edition of the podcast. We're looking forward to the draft next week. Victor Wembanyama will be chosen by the Spurs. That can go ahead and be aggregated. The aggregators want to do that. I don't have any problem with that. The Spurs Insider podcast has the scoop that 7'4/7'5" Frenchman Victor Wembanyama will be the number one pick. Jeff McDonald, is he going to what's he going to be right away? And what is your big Sunday breakdown saying about a tall guy lasting in this league?
Yeah, I think the way to frame that is, you talk to anyone around the league and they say, we've never seen a 7'5" guy move the way he does and do the things he does on the basketball court and use his body the way he does on the basketball court. And that's generally why Victor Wembanyama is going to be the number one pick in the draft. But, the flip side of that is we've never seen a 7'5" guy use his body that way. And what does that mean physiologically? Can it hold up? What are the things that he needs to strengthen and do just to avoid some injuries that have plagued other awfully tall NBA players in the past? There's a history of 7-footers, 7-foot plus guys with foot injuries that are just devastating. You can go down the list. And so what does he do to avoid that? Can he avoid that? A lot of it does just come down to luck. I don't think we'll see the Spurs put like a lot of muscle on him. I think from the people I've been talking to, I mean, he's going to put some. He's 19, so he's going to grow. But I don't think they want him to get too bulky. That might increase the chances of an injury if you put too much weight on him too quickly. But other than that, he's been groomed to be Victor Wembanyama for years now. If you look on YouTube, you can see like him doing toe exercises. The French team he's with has hired basically a trainer to work specifically with him and to keep his body in tip-top shape and injury-free. And from what I hear, they've done just a fantastic job with that. And you can look on YouTube and see him doing toe exercises. That's how in the weeds and the minutia that they're sort of going. That's the depths they're going to with Victor right now. So he of anybody to come into the league at age 9, probably been his body's probably the most prepared as far as avoiding injury, and just it's about as prepared as he can get.
We'll go through the list. I'm thinking about Bill Walton, Yao Ming, in terms of foot injuries. Greg Oden.
Even injuries. I mean, Chet Holmgren. Like even injuries that aren't career ending, they're career forwarding. Like if you look at guys, like I said, there's no real analog to Victor Wembanyama in NBA history, but like tall guys that move like him, like a Kevin Durant, he had a foot injury that cost him a year or two. So, I mean, the league is littered with them, and so that will be sort of it's really, when you talk to people, it's like that's the one question mark you have to throw at them is we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know when it comes to his future health, and a lot of it does come down to luck. It comes down to, does he land on somebody wrong and fracture a foot or sprain an ankle? 7-footers tend to have a harder time recovering from those kind of injuries because their feet are so big. I talked to a doctor yesterday that was talking about his big feet and big femurs, and how that can just increase the propensity for injury.
It's a fascinating story, and with him coming off the playoffs, they'll be very cautious with him during summer league. Do you expect him to play much at all, Jeff?
We're pretty much also expecting him to play in the World Cup, right, for France. Mm-hmm. And when is that, August? Mm-hmm. So playing late in the French league, and then playing in FIBA later in the summer, I wouldn't expect him to play much, if at all, in the summer leagues, which will be a disappointment for Spurs fans, and in a way for the Spurs themselves. Like, everybody wants to see this guy on an NBA court against NBA players, and haven't put that silver and black jersey on time, but it might have to wait till October.
It should be noted, like, even if he skips summer league, which is, I think I'd classify as just a distinct possibility. There's no original reporting here to say he's not going to play in the summer league. But even if he doesn't, it's kind of impressive how much he is playing. A lot of people in his situation wouldn't be caught dead on a competitive court in the week before a draft. But he's in the French League finals. He's continued to play with his team this whole season. You mentioned, there's a chance he'll play in FIBA. Scoot Henderson pulled this out, and this isn't a negative comment about Scoot Henderson, but Scoot pulled him out of the G League, himself out of the G League months ago.
There were people in Victor's ear tried before even the season started saying he shouldn't be playing basketball all this year, and according to those who know him, that just wasn't an option. He's a basketball player and wanted to play.
He wanted to play. And also there's something to the idea that, like, he could have blown out an ACL 2 months ago in the French League, and he still would have been the top pick. The talent is that special, is that highly regarded, that he was not necessarily gambling his future by staying on the court, but still he's gambling something. He's gambling not being able to start, on the right foot in the NBA if something were to happen. And there's listeners here probably that have been screaming this entire first 10 minutes of this podcast about all the jinxing we're doing. But come on, we're not jinxing. We're just acknowledging that injuries happen in the league, and it's something that it's going to be a major point of consideration for the local Cagers for the next 4 or 5, 6, 7 years is keeping this kid healthy, and we'll see how they do. As
careful as they are with everybody, like everybody they've had, like they're going to be Fabergé egg careful with this kid,
and yet not, and letting him play. I think you have to let him play. I think maybe your doctors tell you differently, but I don't think you start with load management right away with him.
No.
I don't think this is going to be one of those deals. But anything else that piques your interest about the draft? It'll be in some years you'd be talking about, it's the highest second round pick in a long time. I mean, the second round pick is not that much lower than where you found DeJounte Murray and Derek White and Keldon Johnson and all these guys. Like you could get a second good player. You should expect to get a second a contributor in this draft.
Well,
it's not just the Victor Wembanyama show.
While we're talking about distinct possibilities, I think there's a distinct possibility they try to use those. They have 2 second-round picks this year, and just picks galore going forward. I think there's a distinct possibility they try to move into the first round and get a second first round in this year's draft. I think that's definitely something to look at.
How high are you thinking they shoot in the first round? Obviously, not trade everything to get 2 or 3, but
right,
top 10, top 20.
I think they could, if they could score another top 10 pick, they would definitely seriously consider looking at that.
Enough to get Victor's teammate?
Yeah, or Anthony Black or someone like that.
Anthony Black leads us into what I expected to lead us into at some point during this podcast, knowing that we couldn't spend the entire time talking about the number 1 pick. And that is, how do you build around the number 1 pick, Victor Wembanyama? And with the players on this current Spurs roster, what is the one spot, both short and long term, that you want to fill? And that is point guard. And Anthony Black is the youngster from Arkansas, who's like the new generation of point guard, this long, rangy, defend every position type of player. That could be one solution. Another solution is to use this abundance of salary cap room that the Spurs have to get guys who are already in the league. And for the aggregators, this is not breaking news here, but I'm just going to throw out some topics while we're on this subject of guards that the Spurs could add to their core of Victor Wembanyama and all these young wings, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell, Malachi Branham, down the list. Is anybody interested in 38-year-old Chris Paul?
Vegas odds have him number 1 of coming to the Spurs. It doesn't seem like a match on paper for either party, but Vegas seems to think it should happen. I think
like the Vegas thing is kind of that guy. I'm on that guy's email list, and he's just looking for us podcasters to talk about it. Like it's kind of the bet online thing. God bless him, Jimmy Shapiro, who fills up my inbox every day saying, here are the odds for whatever. But they're kind of pulling your leg a little bit. Because but it's just interesting. Like, I don't think 38-year-old Chris Paul thinks he has 5 years to play. And if he does get waived by Phoenix, which other credible outlets are saying is a possibility, like, the Spurs can offer him more than anybody else can because of the cap space. But does 38-year-old Chris Paul, who's never won an NBA title, think that joining this team who just lost 60 games is the best way to maximize his 1 or 2 or 3 more years left in the league to win that title? I'm not so sure the Spurs will be his top choice. I'm not sure Chris Paul will be the Spurs' top choice. But does anyone want to play devil's advocate as to why it could work?
I don't really. I'm not interested.
Okay.
If I'm the Spurs, I'm not really interested in that. Like, I can see the argument about how they need vets, they need people who know the game, who've been around the league to kind of bring up these young guys. But I don't know. I think Chris Paul probably gets in the way. I'm not, and that's not a knock on Chris Paul. I just think you don't want to give 40 minutes a night to a 38-year-old man on this team.
No, absolutely. I think, Paul fits a lot better with contenders, the Sixers, if everything's hard, and teams like that were, should be according to Chris Paul's the word. The Spurs are just in a kind of a different place than Chris Paul is. He needs to be, he's 38, doesn't have the ring. He needs to go do that because he deserves to have a ring with everything he's done in this league. And I don't think in the next if he plays till he's 40 in the next 2 years, unless Victor Wembanyama scores 40 and 20 a night, I don't think the Spurs are quite there. And fans shouldn't expect it overnight. It didn't happen completely overnight with Tim, and Tim walked into a much better situation.
Like if you want a veteran guard to come in and teach the kids the ropes and be a good soldier and play in limited minutes a night and maybe take some DNPs, go get Patty Mills or someone like that.
Yeah. I was just thinking.
The devil's advocate part of it is I'm with you on this. Like I would not lean towards signing Chris Paul, but the argument for it is he's not really getting in the way if you don't have anybody else to play point guard, and you wouldn't sign him to a 3-year deal, 4-year deal. You'd probably sign him to a 2-year deal, and he'd be out of the way before any of the extensions come up, before like you're just using salary cap space in the short term, and then he'd be off the books and you could move on to whatever the glory years of Victor are. I'm not buying that, but it wouldn't be a thing where you sign this veteran guy and it hampers your ability to build a team long term. It would be just a short term type of thing. But if that's the case, then why does Chris Paul come here?
Right.
I think he'd much rather want to go to a place that's ready to compete for a title next year, and that's your local Cagers.
I just assume give it to Trey Jones for another year if that's the case. Or if you want to get funny and just to use the year experimenting, let Jeremy Sohan do it. Just play true positionless basketball. Throw Jeremy Sohan and Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson, make that your backcourt. See what happens.
Well, this leads to the part 2 of this little exercise. Also prompted in part by Jimmy Shapiro, PR man for BetOnline, whatever, that sends out all the odds.
You're very happy
Spurs.
about all these mentions.
I know. Yeah, is that the guy that got OJ off the hook?
I think it was a distant cousin. That's not a distant. That was. I don't want that to be aggregated either. He's just the other player who your local Cagers are listed as the most likely new team for. Kind of intriguing to me. A little more intriguing than the Chris Paul thing. Maybe not very realistic, but your local Cagers are listed as the top potential new destination for Austin Reeves. What does the panel think about that?
They could certainly use the shooting, but I don't know why that's the fit either. I guess cap space. The Spurs are going to be like the best destination for almost everyone because they have the most cap space, right? That's like whoever can do it most is like. But Austin Reeves really came into his own. I love what he did with the Lakers. I mean, I don't think the Lakers do half of what they did this year without Reeves. So I mean, it'd be a great addition. I'm not sure how he fits with everything, but with what would they have? But he's obviously a good player from what he did with
He does point guard. He's not a point guard, but he does point guard things. He is a restricted free agent. The Lakers kind of mishandled Rob Pelinka. They kind of mishandled the contract thing, and that they formulated that in a way to where it became a restricted, where even if they hit on him, which they did, it was a huge success. This two-way player that becomes a part of a playoff team, like he becomes a restricted free agent right away. Like that could come back to haunt them in a way. But I'm not so sure, despite what the quote unquote Vegas odds say about that. I'm not sure that the Spurs are interested there, but I think that makes a little more sense than Chris Paul. And that if this guy is as good as he appeared in the playoffs, he's somebody who could have a role and sort of be part of what the Spurs are building. But I wouldn't put that likelihood above 50% for sure. I think it's much lower than that.
He's the kid from Arkansas that likes the cows, right?
Correct. And that could be a source of bonding with our friend Keldon Johnson.
Exactly.
Like maybe they could go to the farm together. Keldon has a farm out. Where's the farm, Tom? Bernie? Somewhere else?
Also looking up some information on Austin Reeves, he would share a birthday with the Spurs beat writer, May 29th. Seems like a perfect fit.
Huh. Well, there you go.
Several years apart, but same day.
I don't know. I
So-
see they're sticking with him though. I don't think they're going to let him go.
I think they're up against all that luxury tax stuff. Like it could cost them a lot. It could cost them a lot. And if they want to go bigger, which the Lakers always do, they want to get another star. He's the guy they have to let go to pursue like Kyrie Irving or Chris Paul or whoever.
A really good columnist wrote this week that you don't need to build a super team anymore, though, and then that they don't tend to win championships.
Well, that's not going to stop the Lakers from trying. Like the Lakers are locked into that super team thing. Like if they feel like they have to win with LeBron and AD, and if they're not going to do it with what they have, they probably need to find. They feel like they need to find somebody else. I don't know. I'm just saying that again. I'm not saying that Austin Reeves is going to be a Spur. I'm not even saying there's a 20% chance that he'll be a Spur. But I feel like that's not absurd. That's not an absurd proposal for the Spurs to look at to see if maybe that they could use some money on him.
No.
If he's not, and if Chris Paul is not, what do you do with point guard this year? Is Trey Jones is restricted as well, right?
Yeah, they'd have to resign him.
Yeah, and Trey Jones he was never the most popular guy when on this podcast when the host would mention him in previous years, but he's turned into like one of the more attractive guys on the restricted free agent market. Like the Spurs might have to
pay him
to stave off some offers to keep him. Is he somebody that you feel comfortable, at least in the short term, just kind of giving him the keys for the next couple of years and letting him run the show?
Sure. Sure. Why? I mean, like Jeff was saying, if Victor needs to develop a little bit, if they move up in the draft and get another lottery pick, I mean, this is a team that's still going to grow. I mean, it's just makes sense to experiment, like Jeff said, and let these guys develop and see what you got in another year or two.
I mean, I think ideally Trey Jones, I mean, we've said it on this podcast a lot, is a backup point guard in the NBA, ideally. But if you had one, yeah, for sure.
You're 6 or 7 5.
If you had to use him for one more year as sort of a bridge to whatever's next, I think that's okay for one more year. I think if 3-4 years from now, Trey Jones is your starting point guard, something has probably gone wrong, or he's gotten really good, one or the other.
In the Express News, Dead Trey editions, and on expressnews.com, we had a story that just came out celebrating the 20-year anniversary of the 2003 NBA championship won by the local Cagers. Tony Parker was a big part of that team, but like having a really good backup point guard proved to be pretty important for that Spurs team. A big part of Tom Moore's story was talking to Speedy Claxton. And it's good to have a Speedy Claxton type. And like a Trey Jones could be a Speedy Claxton type. I could see that on a championship team.
And 2 years after that championship, they almost lost it because they had Bano as the backup.
Yeah. How was Speedy, Tom?
Oh, he was very, very delightful. Coaching at his alma mater, Hofstra. He was thrilled to be part of that story because he didn't think a lot of people remember him down here. But I told him, hey,
oh yeah, they do.
You've got a place in Spurs lore. You really do. No, he was very good.
He was never the alum of the game this past season, was he?
I don't remember seeing him.
No. In fact, he said he hopes that someday they'll have an anniversary. They'll, bring down the guys from each championship team and have some kind of a celebration that way. But yeah, he'd very much like to be a part of that.
I mean, they had 40-something home games and they couldn't get Speedy.
No,
last year.
That's kind of unfair to bash that, because even a true hater like myself has to acknowledge that was a pretty cool season-long promotion that
he's bashing
that the local Cagers did.
You just say bash. Now you're like, good night. You just say bash. I mean, we're bashing it. Now you're like one of them aggregators.
Well, I'm just saying. I enjoy bashing things, but bringing all those guys back. They had a former Spur at what was it, 42 games?
I believe that's correct.
Counting Mexico and the two in Austin, they had an alum around, like, and every one of them was significant, like not the Hall of Famer, but a guy who played a role in a legitimate part of Spurs history. That was cool. And they missed out on some guys, as Tom points out. Like, they could have had a Speedy. They could have had a Bano. I'm not sure if Bano was around, but there's been a lot of cool Spurs over the years.
I'm just disappointed they missed Steven Jackson.
Yeah, Steven Jackson might have been a tough invite.
That would have been a great one.
I noticed Steven wasn't quoted in Tom's remembrance of the 03 title. But that probably was wise not to reach out.
And if I have regret on that story, I probably should have talked about him being inserted into the starting lineup. It's one of those stories you're gathering quotes throughout the year, and Mike Budenholzer had mentioned that to me, and I just forgot it. That was a key move by Pop, getting Steven Jackson into the starting lineup and getting his scoring punch.
Unforgivable, Tom.
I know. I felt bad about it, but
sports editors on here. That seems like a fireable offense to me.
Yeah, so I'm being accountable, Mike. I'm being accountable.
That was a heck of a trip, though, wasn't it, Tom? In 03 to the Big Apple.
Yes, it was. It was a lot of fun being at John. They worked out at John Jay Law School, I believe. And it was a lot of fun. A little sad, as I tweeted today. Yeah, two of the members of that coverage team, Tim Griffin and Amy Dorsett, are no longer with us, and we had a lot of fun with them on that trip.
And Tim Griffin ordering lots of pizza that he'd never ate.
Yeah,
that was one of the first times I witnessed that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's 20 years ago. Next week in Brooklyn, not too far from where we hung out that week during the 2003 NBA Finals. The next 20 years of the local Cagers history could be defined when they draft Victor Wembanyama, maybe another player in the first round if there are some trades to be made, maybe a second rounder who will have the impact of a Manu Ginobili or Nikola Jokic. Like, that's setting the bar extremely ridiculously high, but who knows? You never know what the future will bring. We know we'll bring another Spurs Insider podcast at some point this summer, maybe around the Summer League. We'll see. But until we do see you again, take care of each other and keep it real.